Our next session is focused on the shifting balance of power between media, creators, and brands. Please welcome Emmanuel Probst and Joseph Lonick, who will introduce their guest speakers.
Thanks so much for that, Audra. Hi, everyone, and welcome to session 3, the shifting balance of power between media, creators, and brands. Today, we'll be diving into the dynamics of the creator economy and how brands, creators, and platforms can best work together while keeping consumers and viewers at the core of their missions. And we've assembled a really incredible panel for you today, representing some of the leading thinkers and voices within the creator economy, representing the full spectrum of the creator economy and the ecosystem therein. First off, we have Emmanuel Probst, who's my colleague here from Ipsos. He's a senior vice president with the Ipsos brand health tracking team. Then we have me. My name is Joe Lonick. I'm a director with the social intelligence and analytics team here at Ipsos as well. Then first on our panel, we're very lucky to have Robin Fontaine, who is the head of product marketing at Patreon. Next, we have Matt Lawler, who's the director of digital media and global partnerships at AEG. And then to round out our panel, we have Michael Jacobson, senior vice president at ITV Worldwide. So welcome to our panel, and we're very excited to hear your perspectives on the creator economy, as well as the array of opportunities and challenges for brands, creators, and platforms today and into the future.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, John.
So before we jump into the panel Q&A today, we first wanted to share a bit of research we've been conducting into creators, as well as set up a few of the biggest challenges and opportunities, again, for brands, creators, and platforms within this ecosystem, which is very much being led by the creative work of creators and influencers. So first off, the rise of creators is well documented and unstoppable. In fact, about 50 million individuals worldwide consider themselves creators, and that's a professional label for them. In fact, in the United States, being a creator is actually the fastest growing type of small business. That growth is known small part led by the impact of the pandemic, where many people lost their main careers and or had to hustle a little bit to make a little bit extra money on the side. So we've seen explosive growth in the pure number of creators, and looking forward, it doesn't seem like that growth is going to stop. A recent survey of US high school students actually found that 29% said when they grow up they want to be YouTube stars, while only 11% said they wanted to be astronauts. So this is a growing area, and we're going to be talking about and focusing on creators for a long time to come. Now,
we can add from a brand perspective. We spoke about creators and their audience here. From a brand perspective, investments were 1.7 billion in 2016, and marketing investment will be almost 10 billion for 2020, and we're looking at almost $14 billion for 2021. Growth in media investment as it pertains to creators will be almost 10x by between 2016 to 2020 to 2023.
Yeah, incredible growth opportunities for brands to pursue, and really wonderful partnerships with high engagement and high impact across the board. And then, we're also seeing, and we're very lucky again to have Robin here representing Patreon, but we're seeing the rise also of a variety of new platforms like Twitch, TikTok, and Patreon as well, that are catering to creators in unique ways, helping them share their content, disseminate that, and build their audiences.
That was a double shout out before Patreon.
Yeah.
I was at Twitch, so excited to hear that.
Yes, let's keep it up. And then today across platforms, and particularly on social media, creators and influencers are sharing some of the most engaging content. I know personally, many of the reasons I come on to social media every day and throughout the day are to connect with those creators, see what they're talking about, what's caught their attention, and what kind of content they're creating and sharing out. And naturally, that engagement rate is drawing a lot of attention from marketers and brands. And as you can see here, and as Emmanuel pointed out, we're seeing giant growth here in the spend in just the last 5 years from marketers and brands trying to pursue authentic relationships with creators. Again, going from 1.7 billion, as Emmanuel mentioned, to 13.8 billion in 2021. And I believe moving forward that marketers anticipate spending even more on this area. So again, anticipated growth is high here. Now, however, while there are opportunities that abound, there are a lot of challenges here, both from the brand side and creator side. And later in our conversation, we'll talk about from a platform and ecosystem perspective. But just to start out, brands, they really talk about a number of challenges that they face. The first one and the biggest one is identifying the right creators that fit their brand equities. It's really a challenge to go about and find who that is. And as we saw in the previous slide as well, there's a proliferation of different types of content creators, from the micro influencers and creators who have under 15,000 followers, regular sized creators who have under 50,000. And it can make it difficult for brands to identify, and it's kind of a full-time job itself to find and identify creators and then vet them for matching equities for your brand and finding the right fit. It's almost like hiring a new person for a really important role in your organization. So that's a big challenge, and actually the number one that we hear consistently from brands is the biggest challenge there. Then the next one is actually measuring ROI and campaign results from those partnerships with creators. And to be clear, brands find significant value in partnering with creators. It's more that the models and KPIs we use today are a little outdated for this new economy that we've established. Clicks and likes aren't sufficient to give you the full impact of what a partnership with a creator really looks like. And we have Matt and we have Michael here as well, who can definitely speak to some of the KPIs that brands should really be thinking about as they measure success and build authentic and long-term relationships with creators. And then finally, just as a testament to the full power of this ecosystem, there's a number of other tactical challenges that brands face, from contracts and deadlines and processing payments. But we've already seen a number of cottage industries sort of sprout up to address a lot of these. So there's really been these big knock-on effects of the creator economy that are establishing just new sub-economies, new cottage industries. So lots of powerful growth across the board here. Now, when we get into creators, they're also facing a distinct set of challenges. And, my team's work, we focus a lot on the pain points, the behaviors, and the opportunities for creators. And so what we've brought here is kind of synthesize what we typically hear from creators in their work. What are their biggest challenges and pain points? First off, many creators feel platforms, particularly social media platforms, as well as brands, aren't supporting them and their work. They often feel like it's just a platform for them to host their content. And a lot of social platforms are just there to take a cut of the content and the great work that they're doing. Many of them feel that brands and platforms could be doing a lot more to help them with strategies to share their content, to enhance their content, maybe provide access to design studios and things like that, so that they can keep up with that really powerful content that drew their audience in the first place. And there's also a challenge around promotion. Creators feel like the hustle around content promotion and sharing is a full-time job itself. And at the end of the day, they need to know TikTok, Twitter, and everything in between. And that itself is mentally and physically exhausting. Knowing all the ins and outs of those, sharing that content, at the end of the day, you're like, where's there time for me to create the content that brought me fame and success and an audience in the first place? And then finally, this is actually a challenge when it comes to algorithms for brands as well, not just creators. Many creators will talk about how, yesterday they went viral and today they can't even reach the audience that signed up to follow them to begin with. And a lot of that has to do with algorithm changes that are made on social platforms that brands and creators alike are left out of. And so while this is a challenge, it's also an opportunity for potential collaboration between different aspects of this ecosystem to work together and instigate more positive change that ultimately will benefit consumers and viewers and everyone within this broader ecosystem. So now we're actually going to go into our panel Q&A. And to kick off, we have Robin with our first question here. So Robin, and actually, as you answer this, Robin, it would be great if you could also share a bit about your role, where your passion and focus areas are, as well as Patreon's mission, because, Patreon's playing a very unique role now and at the forefront of the creator economy. So we'd love to hear that as well. But first question for you is, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for creators?
Yes, I love talking about this. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I lead product marketing at Patreon. So product marketing is kind of the arm of marketing that works really closely with the product team, developing the product, and does a lot with insights around creators and really understanding our audience and helping us really build for their needs. It's a really fun and strategic role, and we get to touch a lot of parts of the business. In terms of creators and opportunities out there, it's incredible right now. And by the way, like I hear the word creator and I hear the word influencer. We use them both a lot, and some people use them interchangeably. I actually don't think they're the same thing. And here's how I define them. So to me, an influencer is someone who has a large following on social media. That's it.
Yeah.
They are potentially influential to a large group of people. That's great. But to me, a creator is someone who creates something, whether it's a podcast or music or videos, a video game mods, web comics, writing, really anything that they share online that is beyond just like selfies and casual updates, which nothing at all wrong with influencers like that. That's great. And I think there's overlap between these two things. Like you can be a creator who also has a large and engaged audience, and therefore brands might consider you an influencer. That's not always the case. And in fact, on Patreon, we find that a creator can do really well, even if their audience is on the smaller side. And we just find that for something like Patreon, where it's really a direct to fan membership model, it tends to work better if you are creating something. You have this like creative output that is outside of just yourself. So that's something I think about a lot. In terms of opportunities for creators, it's an incredible time right now because now everyone is talking about creators and building for them. Back in like 2012, 2013, when Patreon launched, we were out there by ourselves, It was not a thing. Creator economy was not a thing at the time. And, our founder, Jack, saw the need for creators to actually be valued for the value that they're bringing to the world and to the internet and for all the amazing stuff they create. And at the time, platforms really weren't thinking about that or building for them. Now, 8 years later, that's the new thing, the creator economy. And at this point, platforms are really starting to build for creators. And that's great because that's always been Patreon's goal. To help creators have more opportunities and to get paid in a way that's more equitable and really recognizes the incredible value that they bring to the whole ecosystem. That's starting to happen. You see the big platforms, they've all now launched features for creators to get paid, often directly by their fans. That's great. And then most of them also have funds to pay creators more. There are now whole venture funds dedicated to companies that build tools for creators. So pretty incredible. I'm really excited actually to see how things develop in the crypto and NFT space. TikTok is starting testing NFT drops. You have this new blockchain powered music streaming service called Audius that it's promising they're going to pay artists more fairly than current streaming platforms. That's exciting. You can now tip creators using crypto on Twitter. So I think this is so exciting. We have a long way to go to see where it's really going to go. And I know there are concerns with kind of the environmental impact of some of these technologies, but I know there are companies working on better solutions. So I think that's an exciting space to watch. But I think taking a longer view, the larger trend that I think you'll see over time is that as creators gain more ownership over their own creative output, they're going to want more ownership over their audience. They're going to be less willing to live and work at the whim of big platforms who ultimately are serving advertisers. They're going to want ad-free spaces where they can build community with their biggest fans. I think they're going to want to build their own worlds, where they can really immerse their community, whether that's in the metaverse or their own mobile apps,
Yeah.
or on platforms like Patreon, where they can have customizable tools, they can have optionality, they can own their own audience and really reach the people that they have kind of brought in and the audience that they've built.
Yeah, and that's the exact kind of disruption that we wanted to talk about today. Just, creators moving forward and commanding their own audience, and then also just the creator economy sort of being at the forefront of emerging technologies. So thank you so much for that great answer, both, elucidating the opportunities as well as the differences between how to think about influencers versus creators. I wanted to open it up and see Matt, Emmanuel, Michael, if you had anything to add there in terms of opportunities.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say thank you for having us, being part of this conversation. Second, Robin, wherever you're at, I think we all need to be there right now. Way better than what any of us are doing right now. But third, I would build on, Robin, what you said about how you define influencers and creators. And I would go one step further and say that influencers are not solely those with a large audience. Influencers are people with an audience. We're all influencers. It's a scale. But not all influencers are creators, right? Not all influencers are, to whatever extent we all want to define that, creating something and putting it out there. You could argue that me putting a post of, my 4-year-old is creating an awesome moment on Facebook for my mom. I don't think that's what we're really talking about, though. We think about creators. And I do think it is had to have been a fascinating journey these last 9 years for you, Robin, to go from inception to where you're at now, as that audience between that creative product, whatever it is, and the audience has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Talk about traditional media and traditional entertainment content, TV shows, OTT, to now being so much closer, but we're still dealing with intermediaries of a different type, of social media platforms and how that compensation model has changed and all those things. But for so many years in media, really since the advent of newspaper, radio, and television, kind of that mass media, we've had really one type of model, and last 10 years has totally disrupted that.
Thanks, Michael. Maybe to build briefly on what we heard from Robin and Michael so far, and Matt, we're keen to hear from you. So we said that influencers become creators, are keen to control their audience, their platforms. And we also spoke about the reach, and we're all influencers, and we know from a brand perspective that more is not necessarily better, meaning people with a larger reach are also more socially distant from their audience. Conversely, influencers or creators with a narrower niche are perceived as the authority in their fields, and that can be very, very good for brands. One question to Robin, Michael, and Matt is, I want to hear about this changing relationship between the creators and the brands, meaning we move from influence towards creating content. Is there a strong business partnership, if you will, between those creators and the advertisers here? Is there some alignment?
Yeah, I'll start on my end, and just the quick context for ITB is 20 years ago, we started our team doing primarily endorsement deals, talent procurement stuff. So while we still do that, in the last 10 years, it's been as much, if not more so, on the influencer marketing side. And that speaks to the changing marketplace of endorsements deals, the use of talent to promote a product through a third-party medium, a TV ad, a print ad, a PR day, whatever. That still exists, and that's existed for hundreds of years of borrowing the equity of an individual who's known and trusted in some way or associated. But what's changed now in the last 10 years that then speaks to the changing relationship is influencer marketing is now an endorsement deal that comes prepackaged with media. When you get that endorsement of that talent, you're also getting an audience with it. You don't have to then take them, which you can still do, and put them in other places. But their audience, again, through primarily social media, but also in other ways, is so much more controlled by the individual than it is reliant on then this third entity of a paid piece of marketing or a promoted piece of marketing alike. So I think that umbrella then speaks to the opportunity that there's not per se one new strategy that everyone should go to about how you take advantage, but It is yet another massively impactful tactic, as your slides have shown, the growth of and the growth rate that is now in the arsenal of, if you're trying for top of funnel, do you look at 400 or 500 influencers that collectively together are going to reach an impression awareness? If you're looking at a, KPIs that are much more about driving sales, are you trying to focus on those through smaller markets and get that CTA cost down? Like, these are things we couldn't do 10, 12 years ago at this scale for this variety of metrics. And Matt, maybe I'm kind of setting you up because I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on the KPI side of things of, does that gel, does that vibe of like, we've got a whole new set of tools, a whole new set of opportunities as brands, as marketers that we didn't have 10 years ago to be able to slice and dice what are, how we reach those goals for, at least for me, our clients, but for you internally as well, how you go reach folks and cause impact.
Well, I think even before brands, and again, thanks for having us. AEG sits in the world of live entertainment, right? For sports and music and a lot of other different media. And so one of the things that we have to do is think about not only the fan and their experience when they come to a venue, when they come to a show or a festival, but also the actual talent, the teams, the artists, the comedians, all of the actual creators in our economy, right? So we are, on one hand, a venue network and an operational powerhouse in terms of putting live events on. But on the other hand, we are very much a production entity in terms of what we put into that network from a content standpoint. And so the thing that I think, to your question, Emmanuel, is, the change really is about the power shift. And you've mentioned it already. Robin's talked a lot about it, Michael as well. But the power has never been in the hands of the creator the way it is today. And so what that does is it gives them a lot of leverage, right? It gives them way more leverage than they had in the past to do an endorsement deal, to have a distribution channel. In the past, you had to try and know somebody at a network to get, coverage on one of those big four broadcasters that the Gen Z panel couldn't speak to, right? But now, if you're an athlete, you have a voice because everyone has a voice. And so somebody like JaVale McGee, who is not not necessarily on everybody's list of all-time centers, but is a really entertaining guy and creates a ton of really great content.
All-time greatest fanny pack wearer, Matt. If you don't know JaVale McGee fanny packs, you need to go to his Insta immediately.
Go Google him. He's got podcasts and video content that's super engaging, and he's created his own platform for himself where he doesn't necessarily need anyone to come and do a deal for him. He can go out and kind of name his price. And I think that's what's shifting, and the way that I think we view ourselves, even though we're fan first. I mean, for everything, it's enablement and empowerment, right? How do we create platforms that allow that content to be created with our IP behind it? Because the more that we're able to enable and empower, the better the content is and the better the consumption is, which is what the brands care about, right? So now, in a world where we're doing a festival live stream, how can we make it so that the content that's being streamed creates space for new brands to enter the festival landscape where they couldn't be on site, right? How are we creating platforms that allow the creators additional distribution to their audiences, but also that adds value for brands? And so to your question, Michael, about KPIs, there are so many, right, that we now can measure across the journey. Once upon a time, it was just awareness, right? Or the overall impression or the size of the audience. But to the original conversation that not all influencers are creators, there are some creators that aren't necessarily influential also, right? And so what does influence mean in terms of getting your audience to take an action that matters? As a creator, it might just be watching my video because the amount of consumption I have drives my business as a creator. But for a brand on the back end, that video view is great, but ultimately I need you, BTS, to help me sell these chicken nuggets, right? I need you to help me sell the special sauce that we branded with your name, right? So we could drive more people to McDonald's because incrementally we're going to sell more fries. Like, those are the kinds of things. And those are 5 different metrics that have to be tracked across the entire journey, but we can now. And that's how we are trying to think about the platforms we build for influencers, as well as for creators, influencers, as well as our brand partners to make sure we cover off on what everybody's trying to get done.
Thank you. That's really valuable, and we appreciate, Matt, your knowledge of BTS. Maybe you for us at the end of the panel. I'm not sure. Maybe one question very relevant to Robin, Matt, Michael is about authenticity. So from a branding advertising perspective, you know, the challenge is its reach, of course, reaching the right audience, but importantly, it's coming across as authentic. The fact is, most people don't love brands. Most people don't love most ads because we have so many of them. And the challenge from a brand strategy standpoint, once again, it's just as much to reach people as it is to communicate with the audience in an authentic and effective fashion. So over to you, Robin, Matt, and Michael, on how do we convey a perception of reliability and something that is respectful and real for the audience, aligned with the personality and the style of the creator?
I think this is where creators are amazing and where they really shine. They know their communities so well. They can really speak directly to those folks. So when creators stay authentic and they only work with brands that they and their communities are really aligned with, they're going to know how to speak to those communities in a way that feels right and that feels authentic. And so I think you find the right creators, and that is really the unlock for the whole thing.
Yeah, I think we all subconsciously as consumers are doing two things. We're looking to see if that content is real, is it authentic? And then we're looking to see if it has some sort of value for me as the consumer of it. Is it entertaining? Is it informative? Is it whatever will motivate me to consume it? And at the beginning of this conversation, Joe, you talked through a couple slides about the challenges that brands in particular face on influencer. I mean, the top three are the reasons why we and other agencies exist: to help identify the right folks, execute program, manage it, figure out the right KPIs. We all touch that in different ways, but we're dealing now in a marketing tactic of a very dynamic widget, right? This is something that is an individual that couldn't get more complex than who makes sense, why, how you deal with them, whatever. Lots of pros and cons to that, but certainly different than, you know, buying pre-roll placement or a front page ad or doing a, you know, billboard or a PR day, right? So it's the acknowledgement that we're at the very beginnings of this, relatively speaking. So there's going to be some amazing opportunity, but there's also going to be so much more churn and diligence that's needed to do this type of much harder to scale use of individuals than just buying a Super Bowl spot to then reach 100+ million folks, right? There's no just to that. I don't want to minimize that for anyone who has bought a Super Bowl spot on this call. And if you have itb-worldwide.com, hit me up, take PayPal, checks, Bitcoin, whatever. But I do think scale, you know, and the complexity of dealing with an individual, as that's part of what your marketing tool is that this represents.
And look, the other part of this is, you know, for as much as creators are authentic and they're great at that, the brands that do this well also know themselves and have some understanding of what the brand persona is. Organizations are not people, right? So it's tough to have that kind of personality, but the more that you can align values with an individual who's a creator, the better that content becomes. It's like dating, right? Like, you know, I care about snowboarding. Well, I care about snowboarding. Great, let's go on a snowboarding trip together. That content is just better than if I care about snowboarding and you care about going to the beach, and then we go to the beach and I'm miserable. So I think it's, you know, about pairing that stuff. That was a terrible metaphor, but maybe it works.
No, it's great. You're not taking the snowboarding. You're not taking the snowboarding brand to a BTS concert with JaVale McGee's backpack. You're taking
this is
I'm
throwing a lot of things out, but I bet you all of them would go on a snowboarding trip, and that would be amazing content.
So there for that. Why are we not doing this on a mountain if we're not on an island?
Look, let's talk about it. The Lakers play in our building.
Done.
So we are actually almost nearing the end of our session today. My biggest fear here, and with this topic and with this panel in particular, was that we would only just be able to scratch the surface of this big creator economy and the ecosystem they're in. But I really have enjoyed this conversation that we've had. I think we're really starting to put creators at the fore and think of them as human beings and appreciate them for the creativity they bring and the audience that they're bringing with them and that they command. And so I just want to go around and give Robin, Matt, and Michael just a chance to provide any closing remarks before we end our session today. Robin, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was just thinking about platforms and what we hope to see from platforms in the future. And I just want to say, like, to platforms, build tools not just sort of for creators, but really work with them with their input. Right. And start treating them as first party stakeholders. I think that's where we're going to see things really start to work well. And, to creators, I hope that they stay curious and they keep experimenting and not just doing what they think brands and platforms want. I think they need to create what they really want to create and what their audience loves and what built them that audience in the first place. And then find the platforms where you can get paid to do that.
Matt, you want to any closing remarks from you?
Yeah, I second that. I think that right now there are a certain set of platforms that are losing power share in this, and there are certain other platforms that are gaining power share because of how they are empowering creators. And I talk a lot about Patreon, Robin. I think what you all have built is incredibly productive for individuals looking to continue to create. We were all put on this planet to make something, right? So being given the tools to do that, I think, is super important. What we're looking at is where the profit share continues to come from and how we can make sure we're doing right by all of the people in that space, not trying to wrestle away profits from our creators because they're our partners. We want to see them succeed. And we're just looking out for risk, right? Looking out for the increased risk of creating creators with these tools that maybe aren't as focused as other creators to make the best content, but also providing security for the creators that are creating to make sure that they feel comfortable building on our platforms. We're super excited and we're playing with innovation in a lot of different spaces. So you should expect some really unique things coming from live events in the next 3 to 5.
Yeah, I'll close just by stealing from my co-panelists here and repeating what they said. I mean, the creator economy and the evolution of it has meant that brands no longer get to sit behind the shadow of their marketing dollars and sell in less and less authentic ways. It's figuring out who you are as a brand, what you represent, and how that overlaps authentically with an audience. And then if you go into this space, doing so authentically and partnering with those who really do overlap with your message on the right platform and the right programming and doing it the right way. But and it's not that you can't do that, it's that if you do, you're just getting passed by at this point.
Well, thank you so much to Robin, Matt, and Michael for joining us today. Incredibly rich and thought-provoking conversation. I think we need a session 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to even, get even deeper here. But thank you again, and thank you to the audience. And please stay with us for that session 4, which is Digital Advertising is Dead. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.